Welcome everybody, let's get started. The topic I've chosen tonight is proper course because of all of the times that I've heard people hailing the proper course while on the race course. Probably a good 9 out of 10 times proper course had absolutely nothing to do with the situation they were in. I think it's possibly the most misunderstood rule in the book. So I was hoping we would get some people so that we could learn.
We have people, Eric.
Well, I wish we had more, but.
Stop it.
So I wanted to go through all of the different scenarios, the situations in which proper course actually does apply. It turns out there are 6 different rules in the rule book that use, not including the definition of proper course, that use the term proper course. So I want to just get through those quickly and at the end cover the one rule that we really think of as the proper course rule and cover what is known as a tactical luff and a tactical gybe, and when a boat might want to do one of those maneuvers. So let's get started with what the definition of proper course actually is. And the proper course is a course a boat would sail to finish as soon as possible in the absence of the other boats referred to in the rule using the term. A boat has no proper course before her starting signal. Now, it's very important to understand that is the course a boat would sail in the absence of the other boats referred to in the rule using the term. It's a very common misconception that a boat's proper course is the one that she would sail in the absence of all other boats, and that simply isn't the case. It's just the ones in the boats that are referred to in the rule that's using the term proper course. In fact, that's so common a misconception that I've known international judges and umpires who make that mistake. I don't know if any of you have been following the Royal Yachting Association videos on the racing rules. They had a series of 6 that they recently finished up. And in general, it's a very good series, and I recommend it to anybody who wants to get a better understanding of what the rules actually mean. But they do occasionally make small technical errors, and that was one they made in their last video in that series.
So Eric, we have always been taught that it's in quote unquote the absence of other boats without any regard to the rule being referenced. Why don't you go ahead and continue through this topic so people can connect with what it means to be as referenced in the rule.
Well, the first of the rules that references proper course is the rule mark room, the definition. Are the definitions rules? People want to vote yes or no on that?
So go to participation and hit yes or no. Are the definitions rules? We've got 2 yeses, and Anne-Marie gave a thumbs up. And Dave, I presume you know, yep. No. You just.
I mean, I just don't understand how a definition can be a rule unless it's used in some context.
Well,
Eric, you want to give an example?
Let's go look at the definition of rule. Because defined terms are meant to be used in the way they are defined in the definitions. And the definitions of the rules say, A, the rules in this book, including the definitions. So yes, the definitions are rules.
Eric, can you give an example of a definition that makes an easy rule understanding?
I don't understand the question.
So one example, Dave, is the definition of racing.
I was going to
A
say
boat
that.
is racing, and it defines how long it's racing. So a lot of the rules actually say while a boat is racing, but they don't define what racing is. So you combine the rule that says while a boat is racing with its definition, and then you have the complete rule.
That's what I mean.
You're
The rule
muted.
doesn't mean, I mean, a definition by itself doesn't mean anything, even if it is a rule. It doesn't mean anything unless it's put in a context.
A definition isn't something you can break.
You can't.
It's just a specification of when this term is used, this is exactly what it means.
Right.
And the definition of mark room, part A, says also room to sail to the mark when her proper course is to sail close to it. And I kind of wish this definition were worded a little differently, because you'll notice that no other boats are referred to in the rule. It just says mark room is room for a boat to sail to the mark when her proper course is to sail close to it. So how can proper course be meaningful if there's no other boats referenced? So unfortunately, I have to do something that I hate to do, and I complain when other judges do it. And that is, I'm going to have to read something into the rule that isn't explicitly there. And the only way I can make sense of this is to say that when a boat is entitled to room, then there must be a boat that is obligated to give it. So a boat cannot be bound by mark room unless some other boat is obligated to give mark room. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that there's an implicit reference that mark room refers to both the boat that is entitled to mark room and the boat that is obligated to give it.
Yeah, I concur. That makes sense.
I hate to do that, but it's the only way I can make sense of the rule. And I'm pretty sure that every certified judge out there is going to interpret it that way. Unless they interpret it as all boats, which is not correct. So can anybody think of a case where it might not be a boat's proper course to sail close to a mark? Any takers?
When it wants to do a tactical rounding.
Well, if sailing close to the mark isn't its quickest way around the course. You know, you could have current. You could have some other logistical things where sailing close to the mark wouldn't be the fastest way.
If there are a whole bunch of boats all piled up at the mark, you don't want to get mixed up in them.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Well, let me show you why this rule was written. Because in the last quad or the quad before, mark room didn't have that when it's a boat's proper course to sail next to it provision in there. It just said room to sail to the mark. And it actually said, and while at the mark to sail your proper course. So they changed that a little bit to room to sail to the mark when it's your proper course to sail close, and room as needed. So they actually backed off a little bit on the definition of mark room and give a little bit less privilege to the boat entitled to mark room in both senses of sailing to it and what they can do when they're there. But this is a situation that, as I understand it, happened once and caused a major stink. So if you watch this, you'll see that the red boat, even though she was on port tack and was the giveaway boat to green, who was on starboard, this is at a downwind finish, by the way. When she reached the zone, she was clear ahead, so she was entitled to mark room. And at that time, mark room included room to sail to the mark. So she turned and sailed directly to the mark and cut the starboard tack boat off. And the rules committee at World Sailing was upset enough about that that they changed the rule to prevent people from doing this ever again. So now, because it is not red's proper course to turn and sail away to the mark, it's her proper course to sail as quickly as she can to the finish line. Mark room no longer includes room for red to sail to the mark. So if there's a starboard tack boat coming in from clear astern, is not overlapped when the first boat reaches the zone, the outside boat can't take the inside boat up.
Okay, so I have a question here. What if, and this happens in gusty conditions, what if the proper course, because we get hit by a gust, and in the particular boat I sail, if we get hit by a gust, we come up pretty hard to break onto a plane and it becomes our proper course?
If you have a good explanation as to why you would have done what you did, even if the other boat wasn't there, then you're sailing your proper course. And two boats sailing on the same leg of the course might have different proper courses.
Oh, very, very much so. I mean,
if they are different types of boats, one type of boat may point higher than another.
right. And
Upwind or down.
And downwind, one may sail deep and one may sail high.
Right. The proper course for a Tanzer downwind is very different than the course for a catamaran.
Yeah.
And even two boats of the same type might have different proper courses. For example, in an offshore race, one boat may decide her proper course is to stick close to shore in hopes of getting an onshore breeze, whereas the other boat may decide to go offshore in hopes of picking up a sea breeze. So the important thing to know is it's your proper, whatever you would do to get around the course as quickly as possible in the absence of the other boat referred to in the rule. Okay, the next rule that uses the term, I'm going to skip rule 17 and come back to it because it's going to be the major interesting one, and I just want to get through the others quickly, is rule 18.1b. 18.1 is when rule 18 applies, and B says rule 18 does not apply between boats on opposite tacks when the proper course at the mark for one but not both of them is to tack. That's a mouthful. Now, it's sometimes difficult, and let me just say again that this is another one of those rules that doesn't refer to any other boats. Oh, I'm sorry. It does. It boats on opposite tacks. I'm sorry. This one does refer to other boats. So it's very difficult sometimes to understand what is the difference between 18.1a, which says 18 does not apply between boats on opposite tacks on a beat to windward, and B, which says between boats on opposite tacks when the proper course for one but not both is to tack. Does anybody have a guess as to when 18.1b would apply and not 18.1a?
So they're still on windward. They're still on windward because it's talking about tacking.
When a boat's coming in on port and trying to get into the Congo line and other boats on starboard.
Yes, Anne Marie, but wouldn't 18.1A apply at that point between boats on opposite tacks on a beat to windward?
Yeah.
When would they ever be on opposite tacks when the proper course for one of them is to tack and not be on a beat to windward?
When they're on a run?
But if they were on a run, it would not be the proper course for one of the boats to tack.
Okay.
They would jibe at that point.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Eric, so when does B actually, what
Okay,
scenario
well-
does B actually cover?
Well, most people, when they read this, they think, well, what about if the wind has shifted as the boats are coming to the windward mark and suddenly the boat coming in on starboard tack has overstood the mark, is sailing above the ley line. And she's no longer close hauled, now she's sailing on a close reach, so she's no longer on a beat to windward. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Now, a couple of years ago, that would have been a good explanation. But at the end of 2018, World Sailing came out with a new case number 132, that interprets the phrase on a beat to windward, which asks, for the purpose of Rule 18.1a, when are boats on opposite tacks considered to be on a beat to windward? And there's actually some diagrams here that are easier to understand. And it answers that in all four of these situations, whether a boat has on the ley line or slightly below the ley line, or even one or both of them has overstood the ley line, they're still considered to be on a beat to windward.
So Dave, would you have considered situation 4 where those boats are on a beat to windward?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so you weren't coming from the school where they had to be close hauled, so to speak.
No, because, I mean, you're beating to windward, you might overstand, you might get a wind shift. Who knows?
Yep.
But you're still
And-
going.
And I think this is actually a good interpretation, because consider the situation where two boats are coming up to a windward finish line on opposite tacks. And they're both, one's on starboard, one's on port, and they're coming up to the middle of the finish line. And then suddenly you get a 10-degree wind shift to the left. And now the port tack boat has overstood the ley line to the pin, and the starboard tack boat is barely fetching the pin. You don't want the port tack boat coming in demanding room. You don't want a wind shift to cause a change in the rules to a point where Rule 10 doesn't apply anymore.
Well, that makes sense.
So that said, what is the situation in which Rule 18.1b would apply?
We couldn't get the one where they weren't on a full beat, close haul. So what is it, Eric?
Okay, let me show. How many of you have ever heard of or sailed on or helped run a trapezoidal course? Jolene, you and I have.
I have helped run one. I have not sailed on one.
Ooh. I don't think I've had that much one.
I think his camera shut off. Okay.
Okay, so a trapezoidal course is basically two windward leeward courses set up next to each other and slightly skewed. The one on the right's a little higher than the one on the left. And this is used commonly in regattas with lots of boats. If you've got over 50 boats in one class. And we've seen it run with up to over 150 boats all on one course. And you set a starting line over below the right side course and a finish below the left leeward mark. And you start boats in different fleets. So you start a fleet here, they sail up around the windward mark, over to the reach mark, down, up, down, and finish. And while the first fleet is doing that, you start a second fleet from start to windward, to leeward, to windward, reach over here, down, and finish. So you can actually have two different fleets of boats sharing a starting line and a finish line, sailing on two parallel windward-leeward courses simultaneously. And this is very common in lasers and opties. But you get into a situation like this, where let's say you have two boats who are sailing on this course, red and yellow. Rule 18.1a would apply because they're both sailing on a beat to windward on opposite tacks. But what if you've got one boat who's sailing the outside course and is coming up to the windward mark on port, and you've got another boat that is sailing the right side course and is sailing this reach leg? This boat is not on a beat to windward. She's on a reach. So you want Rule 18 to not apply. So this is where Rule 18.1b kicks in.
So in this case, a beat to windward is just defined as you're going to the windward mark, even if you're on a reach.
When the leg you're on is one where the boats would have to tack in order to, or to sail, their normal course would be to sail close hauled or above to get to the next mark.
Right.
So JC, the green boat is not on a beat to windward.
The green boat is
Right.
not on a
Red
beat to
boat
windward
is.
because
Right.
she's on a reach sailing from one mark
Exactly.
to the other.
But if the red boat was more of for whatever reason, was headed more towards the right, so not not close hauled, or not on a beat, that would still be considered as being on a beat for this purpose.
Even if she had overstood the mark
Right.
and was sailing below close hauled, she's still on a beat to windward because she's sailing this beating course.
Right. Okay.
But green is not because she's sailing a reach leg.
So you're saying that the green boat does not have to give the red boat room at the mark?
Rule 18 does not apply between them because they are sailing on opposite tacks. Well, not because they are not both on a beat to windward, and the proper course for one of them, red, to round the mark is to tack, but not the other, green. So this is simply a starboard port situation.
Eric, you want to go back to the rule?
So 18.1b says it does not apply between boats on opposite tacks when the proper course at the mark for one but not both of them is to tack. This is not something we see at Lake Townsend very often, probably never will, but that's why this rule is in here. The next rule that mentions proper course is Rule 18.4, jibing. It says when an inside overlapped right-of-way boat must jibe at a mark to sail her proper course. Until she jibes, she shall sail no further from the mark than needed to sail that course. And it does not apply at a gate mark. Now this is the other rule that we have to infer a reference, because if there is an inside overlapped right-of-way boat, we can infer that there must be an outside overlapped give-way boat.
Your point.
in order to make this rule make sense. And I don't really want to go into this one very much because I think we covered it before in previous sessions, unless somebody has a specific question about it. Okay. The fifth rule that references proper course is Rule 24.2, which is not one that we think of very often. But it says, if reasonably possible, a boat shall not interfere with a boat that is taking a penalty, sailing on another leg, or is subject to Rule 22.1, which is returning to the start line to start again. However, after the starting signal, this rule does not apply when the boat is sailing her proper course. So I don't have diagrams for this, but what it means is if somebody else is returning to the starting line, or if they're taking a penalty, or if they're sailing on a different leg of the course, you can't sail out of your proper course to go interfere with them. And as you see somebody taking a penalty, you can't bear away and sail over to them just to mess with them, unless it's your proper
So
course to stay in there.
Dave, you've been sailing for how many years, racing?
You know, I raced a little bit in the 60s and 70s and then nothing until, late 80s. And then from then on.
In the late 80s, was it legitimate to interfere with a boat that was doing a penalty or returning to the starting line or on another leg?
Not as far as I remember. The only time, in match racing you can hunt, I know that, but other than that, I don't think you can hunt.
Eric, did it ever used to be where hunting was allowed?
I wouldn't use the word hunting because hunting has a specific connotation. And there is an anti-hunting rule, Rule 16.2, that does not apply in match racing. Now it is.
I always thought it was the flip. Normally the issue is the person taking the penalty would interfere with the people behind them.
Okay, the
And
first
so
part.
the issue was really where should you take your penalty, not who's going to run into you while you take the penalty.
A boat that is taking a penalty, first off, has to get well clear. So
Right.
if she
But
doesn't
that's
get well
not
clear, she's
always
not
the-
satisfying the penalty rule. But if she has,
So,
then another boat who's sailing up behind her can't go out of their way and mess with them. If the boat has gotten well clear and is taking a penalty, you have to let them do it. Now, if they have gotten well clear but are simply being slow and they happen to still be in your way, and it's where you would have gone even if they weren't there, then they have to keep clear of you while they're taking their penalty.
they didn't get clear enough.
That's Rule 22.2. A boat taking a penalty shall keep clear of one that is not.
So
So Andy, all the 24.2 is saying is if there is a boat that did keep clear and doing their penalty turn, then another boat would be breaking this rule if they went over just to mess with them.
This rule, potentially also Rule 2, fair sailing. Okay, so let's go back to the more interesting rule, Rule 17. This is what we normally think of as the proper course rule. It's titled On the Same Tack, Proper Course. And it says, if a boat clear astern becomes overlapped within 2 of her hull lengths to leeward of a boat on the same tack. That's a lot of conditions to digest right away. So first of all, she has to have been clear astern. She has to become overlapped from clear astern within 2 of her hull lengths to leeward of a boat on the same tack. All those conditions have to be met. And if they are, she shall not sail above her proper course while they remain on the same tack and overlapped within that distance. Unless doing so, she promptly sails astern of the other boat.
Wait a minute. So I'm the leeward boat. I become overlapped. I steer away so that I'm more than 2 hull lengths away, and then come back. What's happened there?
At that point, by the time you get more than 2 of your hull lengths away, Rule 17 no longer applies, right? Because you're no longer overlapped within that distance.
Right, but I'm going to get closer.
Then if you head back up again and maintain your overlap within 2 hull lengths, then Rule 17 doesn't apply, because that overlap has been that overlap to leeward has been established not from clear astern.
Right.
Eric, I don't think 17 turns off just because you get 4 boat lengths away and then get back close again. It doesn't say it turns off if they get more than 2 boat widths away.
Yes, it says, she shall not sail above her proper course while they remain on the same tack and overlap within that distance.
Within that distance, I see it. Okay.
So if your distance gets greater than 2 of the leeward boat's hull lengths, then the obligation not to sail above your proper course ends.
So what I think about Dave is when you're on your 505 and you come up, not that we ever have this, but you come up from astern to leeward of my isotope catamaran, and I don't point as well as you do, you will sail your proper course and I still have to get away because I'm windward boat and you are sailing your proper course.
That's correct, because
I just can't point it.
right, my proper course, if my proper course is pointing higher, yeah. But I don't know how much you've actually noticed, but we sail pretty much the same course as you guys.
Okay, but both of you bring up a very important point. It is the leeward boat may not sail above her proper course. Not that she cannot force the windward boat to sail above the windward boat's proper course. So if you get in between a boat that points very well, like say a Lightning, versus one that does not point very well, say a Hobie Cat, if the Lightning establishes overlap from clear astern, she's simply going to point higher than the Hobie Cat. And the Hobie Cat might have to tack away if she can't pinch up hard enough to keep clear of the leeward boat. So that's another common misconception. I've often heard people say, you can't make me sail above my proper course. That's not it.
The most common situation is basically the last leg of a downwind, and you're heading to the finish on a reach. And the overtaking boat comes under you. Can the overtaking boat push the person up and pinch them off?
Well, that's quite a nice segue.
Not that I haven't experienced this a few times.
You guys rehearsed this, didn't you?
So consider this diagram. And let's look at the 2 boats on the left, the blue boat and the yellow boat. Can the yellow boat head the blue boat up without breaking any rules? Yes or no? Jolene, you want to take a vote?
All righty, I've got 1 answer on the chat board.
Oh, absolutely.
I've got a no on the chat board. We got Dave saying yes verbally. So Jay's thinking, no, the yellow boat can't do that. Dave's saying, oh, yes, I can.
But Andy, I think this is pretty much the situation you're describing, right?
Yes, but it generally starts with the yellow boat being behind blue boat and catching up to them.
Okay, so what you're describing is the situation on the right between green and brown.
In that case, she can't take them up because the overlap was established. The leeward boat established the overlap from clear astern. In the boats on the left, the leeward boat did not establish the overlap from clear astern. The windward boat established the overlap from clear astern. And I've actually seen it done in a 505 Worlds where a boat was ahead and it was the last race of the Worlds. And in order to finish second, they had a boat that was like 8 boats back that had to finish behind, you know, it was just a numbers game. They had to finish behind so many boats. And this boat rounded the wing mark, dropped their spinnaker, waited for the boat that they had to beat and have other boats beat. And when that boat rounded the mark with their spinnaker up, because that boat with the spinnaker up was the one that established the overlap. And they forced them right head to wind because they weren't expecting it. And they had 5 or 6 boats past them. And then that boat went and took off and finished the race and came in second in the Worlds. And there's actually a video of it somewhere. But yeah, the one on the left, he can take them right head to win. And I'd sure do that if I had to get ahead.
Okay,
The trick
so
is the distance for the right pair, though. The real issue is the, let's call it port starboard distance between green and brown has to be over 2 boat lengths, not both widths, both lengths.
No,
okay, maybe it isn't clear, but they are within 2 of Brown's hull lengths. Or
No,
Brown
I
is within
realize-
2 of her hull lengths of green.
I realize in the example they are. The question is if one was more to my right.
and Andy, it's whole
That's right, Brown.
lengths, not whole, it's whole lengths, not whole width.
No, I know that.
Okay, well,
I'm
let's,
just saying that if Brown was more to the right side of the screen and then came in on a hard reach, they could bring up green.
okay, well, let me ask this question. We'll get back to what you're talking about, Andy, in a moment.
Yeah, it's Alan Taylor's move at the end of every race, you know?
Can Brown take green up without breaking a rule? Yes or no? Jolene, you want to take a vote?
I'm watching. So can Brown take green up without breaking a rule?
Can Brown legally do what she's
You can
doing in
jibe
this
and jibe
diagram?
back.
Not as it is on the screen.
Well, she's more than 2
Yeah.
hull lengths away.
No, she is within 2 whole lengths. Because
Really?
1 whole length, yeah.
Okay. If she's not, if she is, then no.
Okay.
Okay, very good, everybody. Yes, you got the answers right. On the left pair, yellow, because she did not establish overlap from clear astern to leeward, is not limited by Rule 17. She can take blue head to wind if she chooses to. And on the right, Brown did establish overlap on the same tack from clear astern within 2 of her hull lengths, so she may not sail above her proper course. And I want you to think of it as you can luff a boat up to protect your position. If a boat is threatening to roll you, you can take them up. But you cannot take somebody up to attack them. You can't come in from behind and take somebody up. That's the general intent of Rule 17.
That actually makes it clearer. Thank you.
So think of it as you may protect your position, but you may not attack. You may not sail above your proper course to attack.
Right. But if the overlap was established 3 hull lengths away, That's a different
It's a
situation.
different story. And that can happen, especially if you have boats of different types. If it's a 505 coming up on a Flying Scot, 505 is going to be sailing a much hotter angle downwind, and it's probably going to establish that overlap from much farther away. And if that's the, and it's actually going to have a higher proper course. So you can get into situations where a boat is going to come in from behind and you have to head up. But the general rule is as I've drawn it here. So what if, and I've drawn this with catamarans because I've actually seen this happen on the water. What if a boat establishes overlap to leeward from clear astern within 2 hull lengths and sails along for a little while, and then when she starts getting under the other boat's wind shadow, she says, "Hey, I'm in a wind shadow. I'm getting a velocity lift. Or if I'm a spinnaker boat, my spinnaker is collapsing. I want to heat up to refill my spinnaker, or I want to heat up to sail. My proper course is to sail more of a reach. Can the leeward boat say it's my proper course to heat up and take the other boat up a little bit? Can blue do this? Yes or no?
All right,
Any
I
votes?
voted.
Yes, as long as you can justify it.
Any other
Got
takers?
2 yeses, 1 no. JC's got a vote in there.
Didn't I vote? Yeah, I did.
Yep, JC says yes, he can. I say no, he can't.
Now remember the definition. The definition is the course the other boat would sail, the course the boat would sail in the absence of the other boat.
Right.
So if yellow were not here, blue would not have sailed into yellow's wind shadow and would not have needed to head up to keep her momentum or to keep her spinnaker filled.
Oh, that's tricky.
So blue may not do this. If blue turns up, even though she says, "Hey, it's my proper course to heat up," no, it's not. She wouldn't have to heat up if the other boat had not been there. So she's actually sailing above her proper course
So it's only her proper course because, okay.
because the other boat is there.
Right.
It's not the course she would sail if the other boat were not there.
That's tricky.
Eric, is there a case for this one?
I don't know if there's a case for this one specifically. Are you doubting me?
No, I'm saying.
Other judges might think differently.
They would be wrong.
If you watch Dave Perry's video on Rule 17 that was recently published on US Sailing Starboard Portal, Dave Perry talks about this example. Only his example was 2 boats that are with spinnakers up, and the leeward boat's spinnaker collapses because he sails into the other boat's wind shadow.
Okay.
It seems to me that would be a hard protest to judge, wouldn't it?
Proper course protests are generally very difficult to judge because a boat can come in with a really strange story of why they sailed the way they did. And if it's plausible, then generally they get away with it. Okay, well, what about this scenario where a boat establishes overlap from clear astern? Can green take red up like this?
We got to vote, yes or
Yeah,
no?
red's on par.
Let's vote.
No,
What'd you say, Anne Marie?
Red is on port.
This is a port starboard situation.
Did anybody say no? Green can't take red up?
I
Yeah.
said no, but I didn't, and JC said no, but I wasn't thinking port starboard.
And I said, I said no because it was port starboard.
Okay,
Yeah.
remember, Rule 17 only applies to boats on the same tack.
Damn.
So from positions 1 to position 3, the boats are on opposite tacks.
And they became overlapped on
Now,
opposite
green
tacks.
became overlapped from clear astern, but they're on opposite tacks. So green is not limited by Rule 17. And in fact, in this case, neither boat is leeward of the other.
That's true.
But
So if
position
you're really
4,
good at jibing, you
at
can
position 4,
jibe over to make it an opposite tack situation as you're overtaking, and then come back on and push them up.
at position 4, we'll come back to that, Andy. At position 4, red is jibed. They are now overlapped within 2 hull lengths, but they are already overlapped when red jibes.
So not from clear
This
astern.
overlap was not established from clear astern, so green can continue to turn to head red up in order to get by. So it's important the boats have to be overlapped from clear astern on the same tack.
So Andy's scenario?
We'll come back to that.
Okay,
What Andy's is trying to describe is what's known as the tactical jibe.
It's a laser trick. They do it all the time.
Okay, so look at this situation where blue and yellow started out on opposite tacks, but blue tacks in front of yellow. Can yellow take blue up if she wants?
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
Yep.
Now, yellow did establish overlap from clear astern within 2 of her hull lengths.
On opposite tacks.
No, the overlap would be established between positions 2 and 3. You see, at position 2, yellow was clear
Oh,
astern.
yeah. Okay.
So blue would actually be slightly past head to wind at the time the overlap is established. I probably didn't draw that quite clearly enough. So she did establish overlap from clear astern within 2 hull lengths on the same tack. But when that overlap was established, blue was required by Rule 13 while tacking to keep clear. Remember the last sentence of Rule 17. This rule does not apply if the overlap begins while the windward boat is required by Rule 13 to keep clear. So in this situation, Rule 17 does not apply. Yellow can take blue up if she wants. Okay, well, let's talk about a few things where this rule might come into play or not come into play at the start. And I have a little drawing here. And the starting signal is going to be when the boats reach position number 5.
so the rule says there is no proper course before the starting signal.
So this scenario starts with yellow luffing, just holding her position underneath the committee boat, and blue coming in from astern with speed. So she establishes an overlap. Did blue break Rule 17 here?
No.
No,
Nope.
Or any other rule for that matter?
Nope.
Did yellow break any rule?
No.
Nope. Unless it's OCS.
Right, as I've drawn it, yellow is OCS. If the starting signal happens at position 5, yellow's bow is across the line. So what about at between positions 5 and 6? Does blue have to bear away between positions 5 and 6?
No.
Any other votes?
Yes, because proper course.
What was the question?
She doesn't have to sail her proper course because that overlap was established before the racing started.
Well, racing starts at the prep signal, no?
No.
Correct.
I mean, before the start signal. That was established before the start signal, and before the start signal, she has no proper course.
But after the start signal,
As of the starting signal, you're correct that before the starting signal, blue does not have a proper course. So she can't sail above it. So at positions 4 and 5, between positions 4 and 5, she heads up, and she can do that because she doesn't have a proper course. As of the starting signal, however, suddenly she does have a proper course. And her proper course would not be to sit there and luff after the starting signal.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter how far back in time the boats became overlapped. The obligation is there. Blue may not sail above her proper course. So between positions 5 and 6, blue has to fall off to close haul.
That makes sense.
So you can take another boat up before the starting signal, but if you established overlap, blah, 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 then as soon as the starting gun goes off, you have to fall off to your proper course.
Would it be fair for blue to take yellow up in order to make her go over early?
oh yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, you try to do that all the time.
I'm a nice guy. I would never do that.
Oh, not me.
It's
You
happening
should.
lots of times.
There's a term for that, JC.
Wait, what's that?
There's a term for forcing other boats over early. It's
What
called
is it?
legitimate tactics.
Okay. All right.
Also, being very competitive.
It's called finding the marshmallow.
That would be me. You found him.
Okay, so consider this situation. And in this drawing, 2 boats are approaching the pin end of the starting line. And the starting signal is going to happen at position 4. Again, blue is sailing faster. Yellow sheets in, starts speeding up.
Well, then she can do it because her proper course was to make it by the pin. If she was in that position and there was no other boat there, that's what she'd have to do to go around the pin. So she was sailing her proper course.
Everybody agree?
Except if there was no other boat there, she would have headed up earlier.
Not necessarily, because because if she headed up earlier, she'd be over the line early.
Okay.
So she misjudged it. She's hauling butt down to the mark, and she has to head up and go head to win to make it.
Okay.
I agree with Dave.
Yes, absolutely. Notice that as soon as she's past the pin, she bears away again.
Yep.
So although she has forced the other boat up, even though she's sailed almost head to wind, forced the other boat to sail almost head to wind, that is blue's proper course. Blue would have shot the mark even if yellow weren't there.
Yep.
Okay, so now let's talk about what's known as a tactical luff. And you may recognize this diagram from earlier, up to about here. in that while yellow has established overlap from clear astern within 2 hull lengths to leeward, she did that while blue was obligated by Rule 13 to keep clear. So at this point, yellow is not bound by Rule 17. She may sail above her proper course if she wishes. But blue can pull a little maneuver called a tactical luff. You see at position 5, blue quickly shoots head to wind and breaks the overlap with yellow. And then between position 5 and 6, then immediately turns back down to position 6, thereby causing the overlap to be reestablished, with yellow establishing the overlap within 2 hull lengths on the same tack to leeward from clear astern. So because blue has done this tactical luff, yellow now may not sail above her proper course. Any questions?
Andy or David, have you experienced that either way on the course?
Yeah, but I think depending on the boat, I think it'd actually be disadvantageous to do that, because if she hadn't, in position 5, she's got clear air and is ahead. And unless they're really close, and if they don't look close enough that she wouldn't have clear air. If they were really close, say within, a few feet, then the yellow boat would be giving her bad air, and it would be advantageous to do that. But ordinarily, I think that would have been at least in the distance shown, I think that would have been a mistake.
Well, this is a maneuver that well, I've never seen it in fleet racing. It's usually something that happens in match racing, where these are the only 2 boats on the course, and they are getting up near the port tack ley line to the windward mark. And blue really wants yellow to not luff her up and make her miss the mark.
Right, and in match racing,
this is really a match racing maneuver where blue is trying to protect her ability to get to the ley line and prevent yellow's tack.
That makes perfect sense, because in match racing, you're usually leaving marks to starboard as well, right?
Right. You'd be approaching a mark to be rounded to starboard.
Right.
And
so it's a totally different tactical situation. And that makes perfect sense in that situation. In fact, back when they ran the America's Cup America's Cup boats, you saw that all the time.
Yes, this was a maneuver that was fairly common in 12-meter boats and J-class boats.
12 meters, J-class, and the America's Cup class.
Okay, there's something that's a similar maneuver that happens downwind. And I believe, Andy, you'll be interested in seeing this one. So this scenario starts out with a boat that is moving faster, coming up and establishing overlap from clear astern within 2 hull lengths on the same tack, a windward boat.
A gybe and gybe back.
And you see right there that happened at position 3.
Exactly what you should do.
That's the trick.
This is what's known as a tactical gybe. Because at position 2, blue could not sail above her proper course. If blue wants to attack yellow, she can, as you see at position 3, simply throw her boom over to the other side. And then instantly she's on the opposite tack. And then throw her boom back like she does at position 4. Now she's reestablished the overlap to leeward within 2 hull lengths, but they were already overlapped
Not from clear astern.
at that time. Overlap was not established from clear astern. So does that yellow have any recourse if blue pulls this off?
Oh, yellow could, well, let's see, the positions, 3.
Yellow could slow down and then
I
go
guess
to
yellow
windward
could
of
probably
4.
bring it back, but it would depend if she could break the overlap or not.
Well, yellow could actually pull off a tactical luff right here.
Yeah, she could jibe
At position 4 or 5, she could head up sharply, break the overlap, and then turn back down again.
Mhm.
I didn't draw that, so you'll have to use your imagination.
Yeah, I can see it because she heads up, she breaks the overlap.
Right. If at position 4, yellow takes a sharp turn to the right,
Yep.
to her right, then she would break overlap. And then when she turned back down again, blue would have to turn back to her proper course.
Yep.
Or throw her boom over again. I haven't seen boats do this, but it would be possible for them to be breaking and reestablishing overlap over and over and over again over the course of a leeward leg.
While the rest of the fleet goes and wins the race.
This would normally only be between two boats that were very close, that were just duking it out for a position. It wouldn't normally happen as pictured here, because if I were in the blue boat flying a spinnaker and going faster, I would just sail past yellow. But I wanted to illustrate how a boat can come up from astern and do a tactical jibe to turn rule 17 off. Andy, is that correctly describing what you were trying to suggest earlier?
Actually, I watched this a lot in the laser fleets. In fact, that tactical jibe, they'll actually use the leech as a luff for a while. So they, don't actually lose much speed. They snap it over, basically flip the sail to the other position, and then come back over, and they're playing with each other all day long. It's quite interesting to watch.
And lasers can sail very effectively by the lee. So having the sail on the other side doesn't necessarily slow them down.
They have no shrouds, that boom goes way out.
Okay, well, that's basically all I had planned for tonight.